On October 24, 2005, Rosa Parks died in her home in Detroit at the age of 92. Led by Congressman John Converse, a host of politicians rushed to honor her. She became the first woman and the first civilian ever to lie in honor in the U.S. Capitol. President George W. Bush laid a wreath in her coffin. 40,000 Americans visited the Capitol Rotunda to pay their respects. Thousands of Americans took off work and school to pay tribute to the civil rights heroine. Parks' body was first flown to Montgomery for service there, then brought back to D.C. for the honors at the Capitol, and finally returned home to Detroit. Her 7-hour funeral at Greater Grace Temple in Detroit featured speeches by former President Bill Clinton and future President Barack Obama. The streets of Detroit were lined with people who wanted to honor her. About 6 weeks later, on the 50th anniversary of her bus arrest, President Bush signed a bill ordering a statue of Rosa Parks to be installed in the Capitol's National Statuary Hall, the first full-size statue of a black person ever to be put there. Yet, despite these powerful honors and most of the tributes to her bore only a fuzzy resemblance to who Rosa Parks was and what she believed in. She was referred to instantly as quiet and not angry, and her life story was shrunk to one day on the bus. The New York Times referred to her as the accidental matriarch of the civil rights movement. Bill Frist, the Senate Majority Leader at the time, claimed Parks' refusal to give up her seat on the bus was not an intentional attempt to change the nation, but a singular act aimed at restoring the dignity of the individual. Most placed the events she was involved in firmly in the distant past. Many politicians wanted to focus on how far the nation has come. 2 months before Rosa's death, Hurricane Katrina had hit New Orleans. Government inaction and negligence during the storm had left many black New Orleans dead, homeless, or stranded. Growing public outrage about the government's response in New Orleans highlighted how deeply racism and economic inequality was embedded in the United States. Many politicians wanted to change the conversation to highlight more positive images of the nation's progress, and a national memorial for Rosa Parks was a good way to do that. Focusing on the inspiring story of a woman denied her seat on the bus now laying in the U.S. Capitol became a way to celebrate black courage and advancement. Papering over the gap between the nation's Declaration of Liberty and Justice for All and the ways it actually treated marginalized communities. These national honors for Rosa Parks did not do justice to her lifetime of fighting for equality or her beliefs that the United States still has a long way to go. Largely held up as a meek, accidental heroine, she was stripped of her long history of activism, the community of activists she worked with, and her anger at American injustice. In many ways, her larger political beliefs was whitewashed in favor of an endless reply of the photo of her looking over the bus window. Having sat through scores of high school and college games, I recognized a good player when I saw one, and Barack quickly passed the test. He played an athletic, artful form of basketball, his lanky body moving quickly, showing power I hadn't noticed before. He was swift and graceful, even in his Hawaiian footwear. I stood there pretending to listen to what somebody's perfectly nice wife was saying to me, but my eyes stayed fixed on Barack. I was struck for the first time by the spectacle of this strange mix of everything man. As we drove back to the city in the early evening, I felt a new ache, some freshly planted seed of longing. It was July. Barack would be leaving sometime in August, disappearing to law school and whatever else life held for him there. Nothing had changed awkwardly. We were kidding around, as we always did, gossiping about who'd said what at the barbecue. But there was a certain kind of heat climbing my spine. It was acutely aware of his body in the small space of my car, his elbow resting on the console, his knee within reach of my hand. As we followed the southward curve of Lakeshore Drive, passing bicyclists and runners on the pedestrian pathway. I was arguing silently with myself. Was there a way to do this unseriously? How badly could it hurt my job? I had no clarity about anything, about what was proper, about who would find out, and whether that mattered. But it hit me that I was done waiting for clarity. He was living in Hyde Park, subletting an apartment from a friend. By the time we pulled into the neighborhood, the tension lay thick in the air between us, like something inevitable or predestined was finally about to happen. Or was I imagining it? Maybe I shut him down too many times. Maybe he'd given up and now just saw me as a good, stalwart friend, a girl with an air-conditioned Saab who'd drive him around when he needed it. I halted the car in front of his building, my mind still blurry in overdrive. We let an awkward beat pass, each waiting for the other to initiate a goodbye. Barack cocked his head at me. "Should we get some ice cream?" he said. This is when I knew the game was on. One of the few times I decided to stop thinking and just live. It was a warm summer evening in the city that I loved. The air felt soft on my skin. There was a Baskin-Robbins on the block near Barack's apartment, and we got ourselves 2 cones, taking them outside to eat. Finding ourselves a spot in the curb, we sat close together with our knees pulled up, pleasantly tired after a day spent outdoors eating our ice cream quickly and wordlessly, trying to stay ahead of the melt. Maybe Barack read it on my face or sensed it in my posture, the fact that everything for me had now begun to loosen and unfold. He was looking at me curiously with the trace of a smile. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. And with that, I leaned in and everything felt clear. True nature of wealth. Now open your wallet and take a good long look at the currency inside. Regardless of the amount, as you gaze into each compartment, try to see these shapes, forms, and objects for what it really is. A collection of green strips of paper and metallic coins of various sizes. Ask yourself whether this is the true definition of money. Reading your monthly bank statement might suggest that money is nothing more than a succession of random numbers printed on the letterhead of a lending institution. But how is it truly defined? As oversimplified as this may sound, money is the best indication of who we really are. No one states this concept better than the pioneering psychologist William James. In its purest sense, a man's self is the sum total of all that he can call his, not only his body, but his home, land, bank account, and wife and children, and his psychologist and his psychic powers as well. If they wax and prosper, he feels triumphant. If they dwindle and die away, he feels cast down. Abraham Maslow, founder of Third Force Psychology, believed there is a tendency in our lives for self-actualization. Maslow referred to self-actualization as the clamoring of capacities to be used, a restlessness for self-development, accomplishment, and esteem. Your full potential emerges not just when you develop skills, but when you first unlock the door to the internal resources of the mind waiting to be tapped. Unlocking that door simply comes by altering your pattern of thought. Maxwell Maltz, the renowned plastic surgeon, underscored Maslow's point. He theorized that imagination plays a far more crucial role in the life than one is led to believe. According to Maltz, creative imagination is not something reserved for the poets, the inventors. It enters into our every act. Imagination sets the goal picture that our atomic mechanism works on. We act or fail to act, not because of will, as is commonly believed, but because of imagination. Harvard psychologist William James, in his Principles of Psychology, defined genius as little more than the faculty of perceiving in an unhabitual way. In his essay on behavior, he refers to habit as the enormous flywheel of society, its most precious conservative agent. It alone is what keeps us all within the bounds of ordinance and saves the children of fortune from the envious uprising of the poor. Every fortune has its start in the mind of a single man or woman. The affluent takes to heart Dr. James' definition of genius by making note of their surroundings. particularly in their work and environment with new eyes, the eyes of possibility and no limit. Millionaires form the habit of seeing things not as they are, but as they perhaps will be, as if they could be, as if they insist they can be. To the wealthy, sight is a quality of mind, and mental perception, not just a physical process. As the wealthy strive to reach their objectives, they train their thinking and belief to correctly capture what lies in their view. Through mental habits and practice, the affluent cut a path where none existed before. Seeing well is essential to seizing well. To an extraordinary degree, wealth creators do both. Seeing their ultimate goal in their mind's eye, they bring together ideas from different contexts to structure a completely new entity. These men and women view their surroundings not as material, but as ideas in action. Unlike most of us, they focus not on circumstances, but on opportunity. I'm a fitness instructor at Peloton and a night athlete, two of the top platforms for a person with a strong, healthy body. So it might seem obvious for me to lead off with a story about body image, but it's where we all begin. We all have a body. It's the first thing that belongs to us. It's where we live and how we move through the world. And our experience within it guides us into the different paths we take as we grow. When we transform it, it transforms us. When I was 14 years old, I was bridesmaid in my aunt's wedding. I'm first generation American. My parents migrated from Nigeria to Houston, Texas before I was born. And in Nigerian families, we call all our elders auntie and uncle. It's like having many parents. All my warm, chatty Nigerian aunties talked to me as if I were their child, and my mother treated their children as if they were her own. We were often in each other's houses for meals. Sometimes my cousins would come over to our house and stay for days. Being a bridesmaid meant that I needed a new fancy dress. I was so excited. My mom and I drove to a bridal store in the south part of Houston. My auntie was already there when we arrived. "This is the dress," she announced as we walked in. I looked at the store clerk, who was holding up a full-length cobalt blue satin dress with a boat neck, cap sleeves, and a pleated skirt. Oh, I was full-figured. I had bigger breasts, larger thighs, and was chubby-faced. I wasn't particularly excited about wearing a dress with cap sleeves that would draw attention to my big arms. I had been picturing something that would make me look and feel like a princess. Blue was my favorite color, but in my opinion, it was wasted on this particular dress. The dress was an insult to both. Maybe that's too strong. It was just plain ugly. My auntie was a stylish woman, so I'd expected something a little more exciting. But it was her big day. I would do whatever made her happy. "Can we see it in a size 18, please?" my mom asked the clerk. The clerk glanced at me, and I saw a flash of doubt pass over her face. But then she smiled and said, "Of course, let me check on that." Instead of going to the rack, she went to her computer. After a moment, she returned and said, "I'm sorry to say that this dress doesn't come in a size larger than 12. I was mortified. It hadn't occurred to me that I might be too big for the dress my auntie had picked. The first time I felt self-conscious about my size was in 3rd grade. My friends at school weren't yet at the age where certain questions were considered too personal to ask, so a group of us was standing around in the schoolyard comparing our weight. I was the third to volunteer my weight, and I did so without hesitation. I was 116 pounds. The kid's mouth dropped. Brian looked at Rachel and said with awe, "Tunde is in the hundreds." "Wow, that's a lot," exclaimed Rachel. Then they continued around the rest of the circle. None of my friends had hit triple digits yet. That hadn't even occurred to me. My auntie had a younger daughter whom she always told, "You need to eat so you can be fat like your cousin, your Tunde." But it was more a practical statement than a judgmental one. She just wanted her daughter to have the benefit of my hand-me-downs. I had good clothes and always spent my allowance and birthday money on them. Every Saturday morning, my mother and I went to garage sales together looking for good deals. From the time I was little, I treated school as if it were a fashion show and arrived ready to finger paint in my Easter Sunday's finest. As I got older, I wore this cheap version of the trendiest styles. I had three brothers. Tony and Tosin were older than me, and P was younger than me. They were all athletic and very big eaters. We lived off the 99-cent Whoppers at Burger King or the McRib at McDonald's when it was in season. A serving size for me was 2 burgers, and I never thought twice about it. We all ate whatever we wanted. Sometimes my brother teased me. In the stirring, highly anticipated first volume of his presidential memoirs, Barack Obama tells the story of his improbable odyssey from young man searching for his identity to leader of the free world, describing in striking personal detail both his political education and the landmark moments of the first term of his historic presidency, a time of dramatic transformation and turmoil. Obama takes readers on a compelling journey from his earliest political aspirations to the pivotal Iowa caucus victory that demonstrated the power of grassroots activism to the watershed night of November 4, 2008, when he was elected 44th President of the United States, becoming the first African American to hold the nation's highest office. Reflecting on the presidency, he offers a unique and thoughtful exploration of both the awesome reach and the limits of presidential power, as well as singular insights into the dynamics of the U.S. partisan politics and international diplomacy. Obama brings readers inside the Oval Office and the White House Situation Room, into Moscow, Cairo, Beijing, and points beyond. We are privy to his thoughts as he assembles his cabinet, wrestles with a global financial crisis, takes the measures of Vladimir Putin, overcomes seemingly insurmountable odds to secure passage of the Affordable Care Act, clashes with generals about U.S. strategy in Afghanistan, tackles Wall Street reform, responds to the devastating Deepwater Horizon blowout, and authorizes Operation Neptune's Spear, which leads to the death of Osama bin Laden. A Promised Land is extraordinarily intimate and introspective, the story of one's man bet with his history, the faith of community organizer tested on the world stage. Obama is candid about the balancing act of running for office as a Black American, bearing the expectations of a generation buoyed by passages of hope and change, and meeting the moral challenges of high-stakes decision-making. He is frank about the forces that opposed him at home and abroad, open about how living in the White House affected his wife and daughter, and unafraid to reveal self-doubt and disappointment. Yet he never wavers from his belief that inside the great ongoing American experiment, progress is always possible. This beautiful, written, and powerful book captures Barack Obama's convictions, and democracy is not a gift from on high, but something founded on empathy and common understanding and built together day by day. Barack Obama was the 44th President of the United States, elected in November 2008 and holding office for 2 terms. He is the author of 2 previous New York Times best-selling books, Dreams from My Father and The Audacity of Hope, and the recipient of the 2009 Nobel Prize. He lives in Washington, D.C. with his wife, Michelle. They have 2 daughters, Malaya and Sasha.